And we are back for another casual conversation with the classic. And today we've got a very special guest, musician, member of the band Rancid, music producer, and one of us, a fan of the greatest form of art in athleticism, professional wrestling, Lars Frederiksen. How are you doing today?
Good. Glad to be on with you guys.
I am too. I go all the way back to that one time that you hopped in a live stream with me.
Oh yeah.
We just sat there and we talked about old school wrestling, and then immediately after, it was like months and months ago, I was like, hey, I'm like, if you ever just want to like come on the show and talk about like some old school wrestling from like the 80s and 90s, I'm like, you're more than welcome to. And we finally we're finally here.
Yeah. No, I'm stoked. I mean, it's one of my favorite topics. That, you know, the last thing I really like doing is talking about myself. So
Yeah.
But even though some people might think it's the first thing I love to do, but in all honesty, I love talking about pro wrestling because I feel like I've forgotten more about pro wrestling than I can remember sometimes, you know?
That's true.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it though. So how long have you been watching for? Like, what are your earliest memories of professional wrestling, and like what got you hooked?
You know, I mean, it was I casually saw it on the TV I remember when I was a kid, because my dad somewhat used to like it. And then it didn't really sort of hit me, you know, where I would watch, like it made a big, gigantic impression on me until I was about 10 or 11. And it was this guy, Andy Finney, who lived next door to a friend of ours, a friend of mine, Sean Gregonis, who's the guy that kind of brought punk rock in our area. And Andy was from Detroit, and he grew up going to Cobo Hall and seeing the Sheik and you know, a lot of the wrestling there. And he had it on TV, and I just casually walked in his house and said, hey, Andy, what's up? Whatever. Because he was kind of like an older guy, but my mom knew him and he kind of looked out for us. You know what I mean? He was kind of like, because we didn't have a father around, but Andy was around, and he would always kind of make sure everybody was cool and safe. And if we were, you know, smoking weed, we would be doing it at Andy's house, you know.
I can relate with you because like I grew up in a cul-de-sac, and then when you grow up in a cul-de-sac with a group of friends, it becomes like this group that you kind of just grew up with, and there's different age groups and level of hierarchy. But I completely understand.
You know, when I first saw it, I think I feel like the first big impression for me was Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas and that tag team.
Oh wow.
But there were so many back then, you know, and there's so many that like I've even forgot. You know, I remember seeing like Polynesian Pacific Championship Wrestling and seeing Lars Anderson, and just because the guy had the same name as me, you know, it was you know, just knowing anybody with the same name as me was like it blew my mind. But just seeing like a wrestler on TV, and not only that, but the world champion, his name's Lars Anderson, and I was like, whoa,
that's so cool.
You know, that was cool. So and that's kind of what drew me to it, really. And obviously the pageantry and the, you know, the athleticism, the violence. You know, I'm a boy, so I'm gonna dig all that shit
for sure. Yeah.
So you grew up in the Bay Area, correct?
Yes.
So what wrestling? So you got Polynesian pro wrestling in the Bay Area? It aired there and stuff as well?
Yeah, because we had a big Polynesian community, especially on my block. We had a lot of Tongans and Samoans who came over in I guess it would have been sort of the late 70s. And my best friend at the time was this a Tongan kid by the name of Juby Saili, and we would hang out a lot. And I know he was always into pro wrestling, and so I remember he was the one that hit me to the show being on TV, and it was on a UHF station, which is before we didn't have cable until probably the early, maybe the mid 80s, you know, because we grew up in project housing, so not a lot of people had a lot of money. So, but you would get big time wrestling, which was I think out of Los Angeles. You would get the WWF programming at the time. But the stuff that you would see the most of was like AWA. You would see a lot of that. You didn't really get enough of the National Wrestling Alliance. I remember Andy also had a big stack of wrestling magazines. And when he gave them all to me, he had a couple years worth of, I think it was The Wrestler. and he had, you know, the consecutive issues because he had a subscription.
Mhm.
And I just remember starting at book 1 and working my way through and finding out about, you know, the New England sheep herders and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Ted DiBiase and, you know, Maniac Mark Lewin and Kevin Sullivan, you know, just I found out a lot about a lot of these guys, and then I would like go and look for them, and then when I would see them on TV, like it was the first time, and you know, because all I had seen him was in the pictures of the magazines, right?
Mhm.
But once cable TV hit, Saturdays were always the best because you had WWF in the morning, you had Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, you had in the afternoon you had the 2 hours on WTBS, and you know, so you had the NWA, and then you had the Bill Watts, the UWF, and you had AWA, and Polynesian Pro was on there. So I mean, you would have an all day. You have like 11 hours worth of wrestling, and no show overlapped another show, so you could see it. And sometimes, you know, like the World Cup would preempt Polynesian Pacific, or an Atlanta Braves game would, you know, preempt the wrestling stuff or whatever. But most of the time, you know, you would have like a full 11-hour day of wrestling. So that was like in the heyday, though. I want to say it was like 86, 80, probably 86, 87.
I don't mean to sidetrack for a second, but have you had the opportunity to watch the Tales of the Territory series yet?
Yeah, you know, I've gotten through. I watched the AWA one. I watched the Memphis one, and I've got the Polynesian one that's coming up pretty soon.
It just dropped actually, and I wasn't so exposed to Polynesian pro wrestling. Obviously, I just know what I've known from like The Rock's books and like that situation.
Right.
But to see that episode of it was really cool, and to see like the history it had and the significance. Like I didn't realize that through all these years. Like I knew it was a big deal and it did have a big significance, but like to hear the stories, and Lars is on there. He's on the round table, which is real cool. So I just want to see if you got to check it out because that show's pretty good.
I'm actually on one of the TVs of Polynesian Pro because I saw it live in San Jose, and I was talking shit to one of the bad guys, and the bad guy was like invited me to the ring, and I was at the ropes, and the whole crowd's going crazy, and it was, and I remember the commentators because me and my friend Jeff Joseph watched it on TV like a couple weeks after it happened. It was like, that little kid doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to get hurt. Somebody should get out there. So I was actually on. I was hoping that I could find. I don't know. I haven't seen those programs since when they aired live. I've never actually looked on YouTube if you can even find any of those old shows. But there is one from the Civic Center in San Jose, and I believe Lars Anderson was the headliner. But yeah, I know for a fact because I watched myself on TV.
If you can hit me up after we're done recording this and kind of give me like the time frame of when it might have happened, I will try to dig and look for it because I used to be a pro at that when I was running my page with videos, finding old clips. But just give me like the time frame and I'll try to look. I'll try to find it for you and see if I can find it. Because there's different websites and stuff that have old school wrestling on the internet.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember when I was on Death Valley Driver, and I think I mentioned it, and this was like 20 some odd years ago, if not longer. And, you know, I think I was talking to Phil Schneider about it, and I was like, whoa, I wonder if he could find it. But I mean, now with the internet and, you know, the way that this video, the footage is surfacing, I'm hoping you find it. I want to say it was 85, 86.
Okay.
It was Polynesian. I don't believe maybe they went there 2 or 3 times to the San Jose. It was the San Jose Civic Center. So it could only have happened 2 or 3 times because I remember I went to 2 shows, but I only remember missing 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this would have been 85, 86. Because by then, look for it. Yeah, because by 87, I was on some other shit. So
yeah, well, and I like the fact that you bring that up too, because the internet is crazy today. Like even when I was younger, in the 90s, like I remember being like put onto WWF early, and like my older brother was like 10 years old, and we had the tapes and whatnot. So I grew up on a little bit of everything, but it was mainly WWF. But then it was the same thing. It was the magazines. We randomly had 2 WCW magazines. And then we had that Super Nintendo game, Super Brawl. And I was like, oh, I like the Sting guy. Or who's this Vader guy? And then when Nitro kicked off in 95, that's when we actually started getting it on TV here in Canada. But prior to that, like 94, 93, I'm like, these colorful characters from this WCW, I'm like, where is this?
Right.
Well, like now it's like, you know, by 02, when I came across the Ring of Honor on a Saturday morning, it was a quick like, oh, I can go on the internet and find more of this. So it's crazy that you were able to come across all this wrestling during that period of time, which shows that you were a real fan because you were looking for it and you're like, 100%. I want more, I want to see more.
Well, once the rock and wrestling thing happened,
yeah,
I think that kicked down the doors. Everybody wanted pro wrestling on their networks.
Yeah,
I mean, MTV, I mean, you know, it was like, just to have like this superstar Cyndi Lauper at the time being involved with all that. I mean, I really feel like when you look back at that whole era of wrestling, it's like that was probably it coming onto MTV. Probably all the networks were like, we need a piece of this, and we need some sort of company or whatever it was. I mean, shortly thereafter, Vince owned everything anyways, and a lot of those territories went out of business. But I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just kind of want to.
No, that's really fun. I appreciate that though. So, like, who were some of your favorites during that time? Then, like, who really stood out to you at first that you were like, these are my guys?
Dusty Rhodes. I think he had a way with the interview. You know what I mean? He could make you feel, you know, something. You know, I remember in Rancid tour, 1996. We were in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is how much, I mean, I paid a cab driver to drive me to the old Omni, just so I could see. I mean, I think it was closed down or something, but it was at nighttime. And I was just like, you know what? I want to go. Like, I want to just see where the Omni in Atlanta was.
Yeah.
You know, little did I know it was going to cost me like $150, you know, but in a cab. But, you know, at the time,
a real fan.
But Dusty Rhodes was the guy that made me want to wish I was there, you know, in ringside. Guys like Ric Flair, you know, the Four Horsemen. I remember watching that, you know, take hold, like start with the, you know, and then kind of snowball into this thing. And I mean, you know, that was incredible to watch. And just to see that way that unfolded. I didn't like when Ole left because I was there from the beginning and even before watching it. But that was a great angle to kind of keep you in tune. The WWF guys, it was probably guys like Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation that kind of kept me watching that programming.
You're talking to two Canadians, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah. Fair enough. But no, Brett was, you know, the WWF, once you started kind of getting wind of like the UWF, Bill Watts' territory and the NWA, you kind of realized how cartoony the WWF was. And as you're getting older and maturing and, you know, you kind of see, I remember like having conversations with the one wrestling fan I had, like the NWA is real, but the WWF could be fake.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
we could totally see that happening.
You know, like, no, this is the NWA. This is real. Like, this is real, you know? And I remember when people would even say, because, I mean, you know, you were hard-pressed, number one, to find wrestling fans that would admit it back then. And number two, like, when you would get asked about it, you'd be like, I would always put forth the NWA as like, you think it's fake, then watch this, you know? So I think a lot of those wrestlers like the Rock and Roll Express, you know, I was always a tag team guy. That's, you know, that's kind of what I really always loved. I always loved like the Rock and Rolls or the Russians. I like the Russians. I loved Nikita Koloff and Ivan Koloff. And I loved the Midnight Express, of course. I love Jim Cornette. I still love Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
I actually had the chance to actually meet him, and I was super stoked that I got a chance to meet him.
That's awesome.
And I mean, there's so many, you know, and I used to go see the Lucha stuff too, you know, when I was a kid, when they would do like these little indie shows or at flea markets or whatever, you would see wrestlers, and I didn't know who the hell they were because everything was in Spanish, but I still like was drawn to it. So, you know, I had a lot of different favorites, but I always felt like I was more of a student of the game, as you know, like I just loved the sport. You know, there wasn't.
How old were you when you finally figured out what was going on? And did that change anything? Because I feel like for a lot of people, like that's usually when they either fall out of it or they choose to continue to be like, oh, I get it now, but I appreciate it even more now because now I'm like, oh, like because I had a lot of friends that were really into it too, but then they would fall off when like MMA came out or like they're like, oh, it's not real. Like when did they come to you, and then how did you get over that?
You know, I guess I sort of knew that it was kind of a work in a way, but I still could suspend that disbelief. And I think for me, like until Vince actually really said it, like, no, this is, you know, I think that was like the concrete evidence that I needed.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't really care, you know, like I was kind of past like wondering, it didn't, to me, I was emotionally invested into characters, into people, into wrestlers. I was emotionally invested in this programming, and that's what really was the draw. And I'm not saying that I had like the emotional, you know, knowledge to understand that or make that connection. I'm 51 now, so I do. But my point is that I think that I was loving being entertained. And I was loving the fact that this looks like it's real. And so regardless if it's real or not, or regardless if they hate each other or not, you know, but you got to remember at the time, you know, there was kind of a weird thing that was happening at the time that it was coming out that it was fake or it was scripted. You had the dirt sheets. More people sort of figured that out. You had, you know, more people talking about it and communicating. You had tape trading. You had all these other things that were coming in that were sort of, for me, like I wasn't really paying attention to the fact that it was a work. It was like I was, you know, now getting involved into trading tapes with people in Japan or whatever it was. Like it didn't really. You know, you started to understand the lingo. You know.
Because that's why I said either you find out and you fall off, or you find out and you find this different appreciation for it and you enjoy it for what it is, and you're like, oh, now I like it even more because this is like a show and I like these characters. Because like I compare it to like movies and stuff all the time. Like you're gonna go watch the Avengers or whatever, and it's not like, you know what I mean. But you're invested in the characters and the story that you're gonna watch. I'm like, that's what wrestling is, but it just never ends and it will continue, keep going, and it's great. I heard a crazy story that actually during your tape trading days, that's where you initially met Tony Khan for the first time. That's true, correct? On like a message board. Wow, that is insane. How long ago was that?
Oh, it's a long time ago. But that's where I made a lot of good friends that I still have today, like Will Helmut, who was Good Helmet on there, and Phil Schneider, and and Rob Naylor, and you know, and my buddy the Birdman, or he was I think he was the Bat Boy on there, but and he was the one that kind of helped me kind of get in there. And
secret society of wrestling fans.
but I mean, I went there as trying to find matches and knowing that like there was a group of wrestling fans who were watching a wide variety of stuff. And so I would now go into like AAA matches or CMLL matches or find some, you know, catch as can stuff, or, you know, some English rules or Japanese strong style or the death match stuff or whatever it was. Like I remember hearing about the Cactus Jack Terry Funk match, and then I remember getting the tape of that match, and it was so grainy and it had like a little squiggly line, you know, through the whole VHS tape. And I remember when I first finally saw it, it was like a good version of it. And I remember, you know, being so blown away because I had like a third or fifth generation copy of it. And watching like the clarity of it all. But like, yeah, that whole time back then was definitely different and unique, because I feel like, you know, with the invention of like eBay and internet and all this other thing, you know, as a wrestling fan, it just sort of like, you know, opened up so many more doors on the fan level. And now it's not like just, the only time I'm going to really talk about it is at the shows. Now it's not when I'm watching it. I'm going to be live or at home. Now it's like, oh, that's a t-shirt that I wish I would have got or never had an opportunity to get. That's from the NWA. I can buy this now. I can get this thing here. I can get this autograph photo. I can talk to like people in North Carolina or in Canada, or it just like almost it blew the lid off of you know, what we knew, what I knew as what was a wrestling fan, right? So there was a lot more out there.
Are you in the vintage merch collecting like situation? Because I know that got real popular in the last like 5-6 years. Like, there's a lot of vintage merch sellers. Everyone's finding the original shirts of things. I even have like the original NWO hat that I got from Wrestling for Sale, and you know, there's a whole community of vintage merch. Is that something you're in?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's at times I'll look for certain things, but you know, I'm more in this place now. Like I got a lot of like, you know, I've got an original King Kong Bundy shirt. Like,
I was gonna ask, like, what's your prize position? Like, what's your favorite things that you have in
probably
there?
that, which I got from Wrestling for Sale. So
there you go. Good shout to Ted.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. Like I still got, you know, so much of that stuff. The one thing that I don't have that I wish I still had is when the Great American Bash came to Oakland, California, and I bought a Four Horsemen shirt, and it was like this, like I remember it was like it's not like an iron-on, but it was like a thick kind of print on it, and it had like this glittery thing, and I've never seen the shirt since. But I had that shirt up until my mom moved out of the apartment that I grew up in, and for some reason I thought I took it with me.
Yeah.
And I don't have it anymore, and I kind of wish I had that shirt. And I asked actually the homie over at Wrestling for Sale. I tried to explain it to him the best of my ability, and the ones that he would come back to me, I was like, "That's not it. That's not it. That's not it." Because it was this weird. I can't totally explain it. I don't want to get lost in it, but the stuff I was always kind of into, I like the autograph stuff, like the autograph photos.
Yeah.
I do have some action figures. You know, I'm into that. I had so much, and now I've been kind of getting rid of all of that stuff now, because I finally got some shelves where I actually could display the stuff that I really want. But yeah, so as far as like the t-shirts and the stuff like that, like I have some stuff, but it's like I don't go out of my way to pay $500 or $600.
Yeah, for me, it's like if I see something I really wanted when I was a kid, or like for example, I had a Bret Hart shirt when I was a kid, but I was like, obviously it's like for the size of like a 6-year-old, so I couldn't wear it no more. And I saw Ted selling one Wrestling for Sale, and I was like, yo, like I had that same shirt when I was a kid. I'm like, is there any way like I can just grab it off you in like my now large size? So I'm like, that'd be so cool. And then the coolest thing about it is I actually wore it when I went to Calgary for Dungeon Wrestling.
Nice.
I'm walking in the back, and Brett looks at me, he's like, hey man, that's like one of my favorite shirts. And I was like, oh, what are the chances? You know what I mean? He's like, I really like that shirt. It's one of my favorites. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I was like, I had it when I was a kid, but it's just crazy. Like I just, with my page as well, like even the way we connected a little bit, it's just how there is this community of wrestling fans, and you don't know who really is fans until you start putting yourself out there. Like, oh my God, like this person, I listen to their music, or I watch them in a movie, or I watch them play football, and they're also like the biggest wrestling fan.
Right. It's cool.
So like, but like obviously now we connect over social media, but back then it was tape trading, it was those forums, it was that connection. It's such a crazy, wacky world. But because you went through this generation, I'm curious. Like there was obviously the period in the '80s boom, there's a rock and wrestling '80s boom, right? Then there was a brief period in the early '90s, and then there was the Monday Night Wars, that boom. What was it like in that brief period in the '90s? Did you ever fall out of it at all? Was there ever a point you kind of fell out of wrestling?
No, but the hardest part for me was when I started touring.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't, you'd be playing or at the club with no TVs. I mean, this is before cell phones and internet and stuff, to date myself. So it's like not a lot of clubs had TVs or cable or whatever.
Yeah.
And the times that you'd be very rarely that you would get, you're working 6 days a week, and normally it's the Sunday that you're taking off, right? So, and then to be on tour for, long stretches of time, it's hard to kind of keep up. So when I as in the middle of the 90s, I got 2 VCRs and I started learning how to use them and record them. But then it would just be like, there was things that I missed, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I knew that somebody else was recording them at that time. And I had friends. So I go, hey, can you send me that nitro from March 3rd or whatever? I want to see what happened or whatever it is, and try to go back to the story, or, you know. But there was like in that kind of early 90s when it seemed like the business was just going to go out of business.
Yeah.
You know, a Monday night, you know, Raw was like in like a little bingo hall or
It
something.
looked like
you know?
college gyms, and it was like you could see the top of their ceiling and stuff. I remember, yeah.
Exactly. So, and then, you know, there was like the era where Sting's, you know, RoboCop, and you know, it just kind of got a little bit too kind of dumb, but there still, you did have like legit dudes there that I was fan of, but I can't say it was just because of my work schedule is really how I sort of fell off of it. And but it wasn't that I fell off of it. I just didn't have the ability to watch it so much, you know? And then I would have to go back and try to catch up. And there was, but that was sort of my life for a long time. But like you said, and what we've been talking about, the invention of the internet and the way things, you know, sort of, I guess, matured as far as society goes, where we could get instant information and things like that. You know, it was easier to kind of stay on top and follow kind of what was going on. And sometimes the stories, you know, you were getting them on the dirt sheets or just the news sites or whatever it was, that would kind of fill that gap where, you know, so you weren't, even though you weren't watching it live, you'd still understand what was happening.
Yeah.
Were you a newsletter subscriber of Dave
I
Meltzer?
was.
There you go.
did
Yeah,
at some
that would have
point,
kept you up to date for sure. That, and then also they used to have those hotlines that me and Gene used to plug all the time. I still remember being a kid, calling the little phone book thing. They'd be like, make sure you ask your parents, and I just be like, okay, ask them. And then like hear about like the NWO getting signed or something. But there was ways to figure out stuff. It was harder. It wasn't just going on the internet. And also back in the day, like going on the internet was you go on one wrong site and your whole computer is busted for like ever. So
exactly.
It's way easier now for sure. Like, you know, I feel like you don't even have to watch the show. You can just go on Twitter and, you know, scroll through your...
I don't like it like that.
It's but there's also that factor of like instant gratification with fans, because like they expect like so much in so little time. You know what I mean? And it's like the patience isn't there anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, I think but it can be, but it's kind of like how you teach your fan base. And I feel
That's true.
like, you know, yes, we have a big entitlement problem in the world. Yes. And I think that, you know, people get this idea that you become a superstar by going on The Voice or something like that. And that's how you make it. It's not about hard work. It's about just going and doing this thing. And if I do this thing, and I get seen, then I'm going to be there. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that there's an element of that. But people want something for nothing all the time. But that's the culture here, at least in America. But on the flip side of that, I think like tangible things like a story, a record, a DVD, or whatever it is, these things that you can hold or you can relate to outweigh it. I understand that we as a society have gone toward more of this crash course TV. We want to see the car crash. We just don't want to be in it, right? And we want to know the outcome before even the story unfolds. Yeah. And so now you got people on the internet think that they're fucking bookers, right? And they know better than these guys. You know, I just really think how he was booked is just oh my god, like what the fuck do you know about booking than what you learned on Twitter? It's like you know, it's just it's mind-boggling to me that the fans, at least some fans, think that they know better. Than if you knew better, then you would have had a job.
Yeah.
You know, this would have been your job. So it's kind of, but then, you know, great art is always going to have its critics, and the critics just are unfortunately the people who consume the product, you know? And
well, I'm sure you deal with the same thing with music as well. There's going to be people in there that are like, you know, I would have done this differently, or this sounded better, you know?
Here's the one thing, and I'll tell you the secret to all those people who do criticize. The artists really don't give a shit what you fucking think. We don't care. We actually think that you're lame. We think you're stupid, because if you could do better than I would, then you would be, and then I would be buying your records or going to your wrestling shows or whatever. It's like, but then again, that's probably just my age and just my crotchiness. But it's like, you know, I just think it's stupid. It's like it's an art form, and if you're judging, I mean, art is just art, right? And it's either art that you like or art that you don't like. There's no reason to go and tell everybody how you really feel about someone's art. It's just,
there's no in between.
It's I mean, I feel like it's a very entitled, selfish place to go. I mean, if I don't like a band, I don't go on their website and say, these guys fucking blow. They suck. I just don't listen to them.
Well, that's perfect, because that's the one thing I always point out. I'm like, I think it's fine for anyone to have an opinion. You might like something, you might not like something, you might like aspects of the show and other aspects you might not like of the show. But to fully criticize something, but then continue to watch, to continue to criticize it, what's the point? You know? What's the point? I'm not against you having opinions, but like, if it's bothering you that much, like to the extent where you're like, why are you even watching? Like,
well, opinions are like assholes, right? As they say. So everyone has one, and they all stink. So it's just like, no, I don't. I think it's ridiculous. Like, if you, I mean, I know what professional wrestlers, because I've had inside, you know, baseball on what they go through, how they have to prepare themselves. They're putting their life at risk, basically, because one wrong move, and we've seen it before, you're dead. Look at Masawa. Look at 100%. Fucking, you know, Hayabusa. Like, these like accidents are very real, and they happen, you know? And so just to have that, I just have that much respect that I know that you're going in there for your craft and for your art. So I'm not going to criticize you for, you know, botching a move or whatever it is, because I understand how, you know, what it takes. I've never done it myself, but I got a pretty good idea about what it takes to do what they do. And I know that I can't do that. So why would I criticize that with not being able to do that? Makes sense.
No, 100%. Yeah. I always think it's crazy when it's the people criticizing the wrestling part of it. Because I'm like, unless you can wrestle, what do you like? You can say a match is good or bad, but you can't be like, feels bad because of this. And like, have you done it? Have you tried it? Like, I don't understand. You know, whether you like it or not, that's one thing. But you know,
I'm a firm believer that you know, a good story can keep people in tune for a long time. I mean, it's been proven over the years. I think that if you have a good story, the problem is I think that sometimes a lot of these things, they feel like, companies maybe feel like, oh, we're losing, we're going for ratings, or we're doing this, and we need a next. And so the substance of the story can get lost. So you have to like digest all this in hopefully a 3-month time frame. You know what I mean? It's like, one of my favorite things to happen was the Goldust Stardust tag team. That made me fall in love with pro wrestling again. And how did
Cody did such a good job at Stardust? Like, he killed it.
And how long did that last? What, a cup of coffee? You know, and it was such a bum out. So it's like, but I don't know better. You know, I mean, maybe there was something else that was there that I don't know. Am I upset about it? Yes. Have I said that I've not been upset about it? Yes. But I never. It's like I'm not the booker there. I'm not the owner of that company. But it's like, there's nothing I can do to change it. And I wouldn't. I don't know if I would have done anything different. I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe there was something else there that none of us really knew about, but it was gone like that. Even though it was the coolest thing in the world to me, it was still gone like that, you know? So
do you think, like, I have so many questions I want to ask you. First things, I'm going to ask you a quick one. If you just quickly answer, and then we'll jump back to modern wrestling, because I feel like we've made it to modern wrestling. But WCW, WWF, what were you rocking with more than the Monday Night Wars?
I watched both
too. I watched both too, but like, okay, fair enough.
I never took a side. I thought that for me, like, just the fact that they were doing what they were doing, and the caliber of performance coming from both sides of, you know, there was certain guys you know, in each company that I wasn't really into.
Mhm.
The WWF at the time, even though they were getting their ass kicked, I did feel I liked Mankind. I liked Undertaker. I wasn't really ever a fan of like Lex Luger or I'm trying to think who else was there, or Hall and Nash. Those guys weren't really my dudes. Like I was a Bret Hart guy, or I wasn't really a Shawn Michaels guy either. You know,
Yeah.
I was always like, I don't know. I like different people for different things. I understand how great they are, but I'm not like a huge Shawn Michaels fan. I'm not.
No,
I've
100%.
met him a few times in my life. He's a super nice guy. I've gone to hockey games with Bret Hart. So it's like, you know, I've had these experiences with these guys on a personal level outside of the ring. And that's helped me judge their careers, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but, you know, for me, you know, I never really did check a side. I had 2 VCRs at that time. So I just
Yeah.
watched one show that I felt like watching, and then I would
And then tape the
go
other.
watch.
Do you ever do
You
the
know?
old it's illegal, but you go rent a tape from like a Blockbuster or just video and then you record it onto your own tape? Like
Of course.
it was like the old trick. It was the old trick
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, we
You'd
weren't
have
even
all the
probably.
WrestleManias.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, but no, I did that a few times, but doesn't matter. It's a whole other story.
But no,
Um,
I was a kid. I was actually like a kid back then too. So for me, it was like I had favorites on both shows. So I grew up watching my brother's tapes. So like I was obviously Hogan, Macho Man. Like I grew up watching those guys, Piper. But then on the flip side, I love Bret. Undertaker captured my imagination. Mankind scared me. So I was the same. Like I just enjoyed whatever wrestling I could get at that age. Because when you're young, you just enjoy whatever you get. But for you, I was like, you were probably a little bit older at the time. So I wonder if you picked a side.
no, I mean, it's just because I loved, you know, Macho Man, and I loved, you know, I think I just loved wrestlers. And like I said, I was more of a student of the game than a fan of a certain promotion. Like the more the merrier, you know. I just wanted to see the guys. I wanted to see One Man Gang. I wanted to see the Fabulous Freebirds. I wanted to see, you know, Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. I wanted to see, you know, whomever, Leon White, who became Big Van Vader or whatever. Like I wanted to see these guys. I didn't care, you know. For me, taking the side, it's like I was into punk rock, so it's like I already chose my side. Like I wasn't gonna like let some wrestling company and my fandom define me.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean?
We see a little bit of today with the tribalism between the AEW fans and the WWE fans. Just enjoy both, guys. Enjoy both. Be grateful that we have all of it.
Like there's enough division. There's enough separation in this world. I don't know why I mean, of course it was going to go to wrestling, but it's just the modern day. And I think the culture that we're in, everybody wants to choose a side, and it's stupid, but you know, it is what it is. There's no real middle ground in a lot of ways, but you know, it's just the cycle that we're in right now. And I think that we're
100%.
coming out of it, you know, but I feel like,
I do think, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, I think what happened was at the time, because WWE was like the big mainstream name for so long, there's a little bit of disdain for them at some point. So when the alternative came out, there's just a bunch of people like, well, I don't like them, I got this. Once they realize it's good and okay to like both of them, and under the new regime, there's been a little bit of people going like, oh, Vince is gone, so maybe you can watch this again. It's gonna die out, but otherwise, it's just weird.
Well, I think, you know, honestly, like I wasn't, you know, for a couple of years, I couldn't watch the WWE product. I just thought it was shit. I just thought it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. And no matter how hard I tried to like it, I would find something with somebody, maybe one of the wrestlers or something. I go, okay, I'm going to tune in for that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they fired that guy, or then they stopped using that guy. And it's like, okay, you know, and I feel like it started with the Stardust thing. But when AEW came out, I mean, basically it's indie wrestling on TV, you know. And if you go to any indie show, and I love indie wrestling, and I go, there's an indie here in town, so called West Coast Pro, and a lot of guys that are wrestling. I saw their first matches with Vinny Massaro, or you know, whomever, you know, and I still go watch them wrestle today, 20 years after the fact. When you know, even It's like, and I met a lot of these guys when I did a little loop with Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan, and so it's just like, you know, I love indie wrestling. That's what the AEW kind of brought to the forefront, and I think there's obviously like very talented guys, but it's definitely very desperado kind of like outlaw kind of wrestling, and I love that aspect of it. But now with the WWE and the regime change, I mean, you're seeing they're actually saying the words pro wrestling again on their TVs, you know, on their shows. They're using words that you know, how do you ban words from using to describe a situation? It's like, to me, it's like, you know, I mean, I don't know. I'm just happy that there is a regime change, and there's some characters there now. There's some wrestlers back there now that I can actually bite in again.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, who do you enjoy like watching from WWE, like the current product?
Well, Cody, you know, obviously.
Cody is great.
Braun. I mean, that match that he had with Homeboy at the
Crown Jewel.
Thank you. It was great. It was insane. I'm still and will always love Rey Mysterio. So
the man.
I love, and I see the NXT programming is probably what I watch the most from the WWE product.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a fan of Roman Reigns. I never have been, and I never will. Probably never will be. Probably 20 years from now, when I look back in his career, I'll probably go, "Oh, I missed out." But
maybe not a fan, but you'll find some respect for him. And be like, "Oh, you know, he did what he did."
No. I'm not saying I don't have any respect for him. I just don't enjoy watching him. I just it's like it's not relatable to me. You know. That's not. I just don't relate. Sami Zayn is the best part of that whole thing for me. He's the one that ties it all together and has really made it, because Roman Reigns, let's be honest, they pushed them down our throats and nobody gave a shit. He figured it out, and he's now the biggest thing happening. So,
and it would have got a lot more still if the Sammy thing didn't get involved in the last few months. For
100%.
sure. We probably would have been like, "Oh, this is getting boring." But with the Sammy thing, it kind of reinvented itself, and it's like, "Oh,
well, this is what I'm talking about. Like the storyline. How long has this storyline lasted?
Yeah, like 2 years since 2020.
So you can't tell me that the Crash Course TV is the only way it works, because he's still keeping people engaged 2 years after the fact.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that theory is completely gone out the window now, because at least you have one example.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing it now with the fans that we're in a weird era where, and I love all the wrestling, the stories, the characters, or whatever, but we're in a weird era where it's almost dominated by the wrestling that really love the wrestling, and the story they'll let the story backseat as long as the wrestling is really good, and I appreciate that too. But it's like, man, you understand the wrestling is so much more memorable as long as we're invested in the stories and the characters. But there is that lack of patience and that need for instant gratification, because you get a guy like Bray Wyatt who just returned with this whole lead up with the White Bunny, and it was super fun and everyone was having fun trying to crack the code. And now they're already going on the internet getting bored, being like, well, this is taking so long and nothing's happening. But it's like, you know, there's gonna be a payoff as long as you're just patient, you know. Like,
but that's the thing. It's like, you know, I feel like a lot of the fan interactiveness is like a double-edged sword, right?
It is.
And you know, there are going to be people out there that are not going to just enjoy it for what it is. It's like everybody wants it to be Christmas tomorrow, or everybody wants it to be their birthday, or whatever it is. It's like there's no wait. And as you get older, you don't want those birthdays to come. So
trust. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just probably the era in which I grew up in, and just how I've learned to appreciate art in a different way. And it's not that I learned how to appreciate it better than anybody else. It's just the way that I do it. I don't go on the internet and talk shit to people. I just don't do it. You know what I mean? It's not my trip. If I know them, I might crack a joke, you know,
but they're in on it. They know what you're talking about.
But I don't go, it's just, that's not what I do, you know? But I think like the modern day, I feel like, you know, with AEW I'm hoping that, you know, unfortunately the culture there has sort of, you know, I feel sorry for that company in some ways, just because I feel like, you know, it seemed like it was an all for one for all, and I don't necessarily know if that's the way it is there anymore.
Yeah.
The WWE, you know, it's picking up steam, and I'm just hoping in 5 years we still got, you know, an Impact, an AEW, a WWE. I hope GCW comes up. I hope, you know, some other promotions come up. You know, for a while, the only promotion I could really watch and really sink my teeth in was GCW. You know, so.
Mm-hmm. And they're always doing fun stuff. There's always some crazy stuff happening in GCW.
Yeah.
So fun. Yeah.
But there was periods of my life where I wouldn't watch anything else other than Japanese wrestling.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, and there was periods of my life where I only watched deathmatch wrestling, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I love it all. I think it's all welcome, you know? So
I always try to say it. I'm like, at this point, we're at a point where there's like music or movies or any other form of art or entertainment. There's different genres at this point in wrestling. There's something for everyone. And you know, if that's not doing it for you, you can go. If you love that, like I'm not a huge deathmatch wrestler, a whole bunch of it. I think I liked it when I was younger because I was like, oh, it's crazy. And now that I'm older, I'm like, this is kind of like, I feel like I'm stressed for the guys. But like there's different genres for everybody. Like if you want more of that indie wrestling, there's indie wrestling for you. If you want that Japanese wrestling, and the expectation, it's so weird because I have an expectation for the wrestling here in North America. I want to be a little bit entertained and I want some of the story. But in Japanese wrestling, like the story's told in the ring between the two guys, and it's like a totally different expectation. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, it's because everything's a little different.
Right. Well, I think that American wrestling over the years told the story with the commentator, or at least helped tell the story. And I think that comes from, you know, I mean, if you watch some of those early NWA when you had Tony Schiavone and David Crockett on the call, the story was fucking told in the ring. Let's just be honest. You know what I mean? They were actual commentators. They were actually commenting on, you know, what was happening in the ring. Now you have like Michael Cole, who's literally got no personality, right? Telling you a story in a very monotone voice. And it's like, I'm not getting anything from you. I'm not getting any emotion. So I feel like, you know, and God bless Michael Cole, whatever. But my point is that, like, you know, if you're not able to tell a story in the ring, then you're not going to be able to emotionally get people to emotionally invest. And I think, you know, at least that's what I've kind of deducted over the years. And that's why you can always tell I think, you know, also the style of matches has changed. So now, like, you got like the pro wrestling guerrilla kind of style. It's just where it's a spot, go through a table, run the ropes, get back out, go through another table, now run the ropes again. It's like there's no psychology. It's all, you know, acrobatics. And it's like there is a place for that. And I want that once on the card at least, you know, but like I don't want a whole show of that. You know?
No, I can relate.
And even in the deathmatch wrestling now, there are stories being told, and you got guys like Schlack or Nick Gage or Alex Colon. Carlos Colon. Carlos Colon.
Oh, wow. Get on my wrestling. That's kind of. He's getting kind of old.
If you think about Puerto Rico, I mean, that shit
it was like deathmatch wrestling.
It was.
You know,
it was like the origins of deathmatch wrestling.
Exactly. But I mean, if you think a lot about some of these guys that really can go in the ring and tell a story, you know, who have actually been trained to be wrestlers, and then they go, it's not just deathmatch. I mean, look at John Moxley. John Moxley was, you know, cut his teeth in CZW.
I actually made them watch some John Moxley CZW recently because they're a little bit younger. I'm like, hey, you got to watch some of this stuff. So I was reading his book. And I came across him talking about the Tournament of Death when Nick Gage got sliced in the armpit. And I was like, oh, let's go watch it. And I happened to find the whole show on YouTube. And I was like, oh, this is crazy.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of these guys who
that cut out.
Are you there?
Yeah,
you're good. Are you guys good?
Very good.
Okay, so a lot of these guys learned how to wrestle. You know, actual wrestle, and then they take that psychology and they move it into the death match. Now it's not just blood and guts. I mean, you look at a guy like Jun Kasai or some of these Japanese guys who've been doing it for years and made careers, and out of just deathmatch wrestling, you watch one of those matches, it's psychological as fuck. There's a reason. It's not just, I'm going to jump you into a pit with alligators for a reason. Like that's like a finish, it's like or it's a way to get to knock that opponent down because he's a tough SOB. He's in a death match, right? So it's like, you got, the things that you have to do to wear a guy down, obviously the violence has got to be way more, because if these guys are doing it on a daily basis, then they're that much more tough. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
So you have to believe in that, and I feel like the way that you pace a match, whether you're using an object or not, it's like, I remember watching AEW, and I think it was a Moxley match, and it's probably, I remember it was during the
pandemic.
So it was in Florida whenever they're doing those shows in Florida. It was on TV. And I feel like John Moxley was in the match. I could be wrong, but somebody goes through a table, right? And then literally 2 seconds later, he's in the ring running the ropes. I'm going, why did you go through a table then?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? So the table is now meaningless. And then you just got up from that, like you just, oh, excuse me, I just, tripped a little bit on a piece of concrete that was sticking up on the sidewalk. And now I'm going to go run these ropes, and we're going to do this whole thing in here. It's just like, it makes no sense. And so,
yeah, 100%.
So that's where I feel like it doesn't really happen with the visual for me to start to disconnect. Where it happens is that in those little idiosyncrasies, like going through a table and then running the ropes, I'm just kind of going, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And then I stop engaging, and I start to disconnect from what's actually happening. And then I'm just like, who cares who wins?
It's hard to get invested after that. You know what I mean? Because they have you, and then like something happens that just doesn't make sense. And it's like, what's the point of even watching at this point? You know what I mean? Like you just lose sight. Yeah.
Yeah. When
I feel like that.
Go ahead.
I feel like I've been through that too, where someone will be like 1 minute really hardcore selling like their knee because it's hurt or whatever, and the next thing you know, they're doing like a 450 splash moonsault. I'm like, isn't your knee hurt? I'm very confused, but I don't know.
It's ridiculous, but it's not a slight on the performer. It's I feel like producers are there for a reason too,
Yeah.
And so if you're a good producer, you should point out, well, if you're selling the knee, you might not want to get up on the top rope and do the 560 moonsault with the fucking blah, 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 and then do all this thing. It's like, it's got to all make sense. And it's like, if you look at those matches, like, and I think when Punk came back and really had the perfect year before all the bullshit happened, I feel like, he was telling those stories, and he could show you that Will Hobbs could tell a story. He could show you that Darby Allin could tell a story. He could show you that MJF was obviously the story, but let's just be honest. But
that was my favorite. That was my favorite storyline in AEW thus far, was the MJF Punk.
So good. So good.
Yeah. And they worked well together, and they complemented each other. That dog collar match was off the hook.
I was there live for that. I loved it.
So, just being able to watch that and see that actually, no, real wrestling can happen, and not only that, but then your number one guy who's carrying the promotion on his back, bringing them their first $1 million house, bringing them all kinds of new eyes, bringing them their highest ratings, is the number one wrestler, not high spot fest guy or blah, blah, this and that. He's bringing psychology. He's bringing the story. He's bringing the timing. He's bringing everything. You watch his matches compared to the Jungle Boy matches or the other kind of matches. It's two totally different things. It's two totally different pacings. But 100%. He's bringing back that like Southern style, kind of like in Dax and Cash are the same kind of wrestlers. And there's a few other guys there that do the same thing. Jericho is also one of them. But like, I feel like, the number one guy, the face of your company, is actually pro wrestling. He's doing what it is. But he's also bringing the new sort of era and the older school, and he's melding it, and it's a hybrid of all of it. and you're entertained, and the
100%.
matches are, you know what I'm saying? So you know, with the head of the table angle, and with the wrestling that you've had a chance to see on AEW, it is fucking possible to tell a story and to have real pro wrestling where it's an actual, you know, psychological, physical event, you know.
100%. No, I think what CM Punk is, you know, you talked about the hardcore stuff, but with his match with MJF, you know, the dog collar match, it made sense. You know what I mean? Like, there was purpose behind it. These guys, you know, hated each other. MJF wanted revenge on CM Punk because that was his hero, quote unquote. And there was a story. It made sense. And then, you know, in CM Punk's matches, you know, on a week to week, like, you wouldn't see him, you know, do like tope suicidas and stuff. Like, you would see him grab holds, you know, wear the big guy down. Like, for example, the Wardlow match, you saw him, you know, use his, you know, in-ring tactics to like break Wardlow down. How's he gonna do it? And then it made sense. It wasn't just like GTS 1, 2, 3. It had to, you know.
Well, not only that, but
the move should have a purpose if you include it. If you the story.
But and look what he did for Wardlow. I mean, how many power bombs did he fucking take? Was like 18 or some shit like that.
A lot of them.
but he basically said, you know, you're going to be a killer. You're going to be a killer. And now look at how people view him now.
Wardlow, 100%. All of that aside, though, just quick question: do you think we'll see CM Punk wrestle again? In your opinion, anytime soon?
Well, I just, you know, it's funny because I just was hanging out with him over the last couple of days, and you know, he's still recovering from his injury. Mm-hmm. I won't say much more than that. Yeah. I don't think we've seen him for the last time in a ring, but that's just me being hopeful because, you know, not only being as close as I am to him, I feel like I'm also a fan. Yeah. And he's got a lot of drive, you know, and I think he's got a lot of purpose. Yeah. And I think he loves the business. Yeah. And I know for me, it's, you know, it's like, even though I've had my ups and downs with music in my life, and there's sometimes that I don't want to be up on that stage or maybe because I had a bad day or whatever the hell it is. I'm a human being. Right. But I still go and I do it because there's still that part of me that is that, you know, it's not what defines me. It's not what validates me anymore. It used to be, but for me, there's a desire, you know, as Roddy Piper would call it, the sickness. Right. Yeah. So, but it's not, I don't want to go up on that stage for it's for different reasons now. It's about coming together with, you know, the guys that I'm going up there with. It's about that synchronicity that you share, that chemistry that you share. It's no longer about making the crowds pop or, you know, whatever it may be, it used to be. Or look, you know, I never was really a look at me kind of guy, even though I was a look at me that kind of guy. But like in here anyway, is what I'm trying to say. But I feel like I do, my performance on a stage now, it comes from a different place than it did, let's say, 20 years ago. Yeah. You know, because I've matured. And so you see that also with wrestlers. And I think that, you know, I hope that wasn't the last time. But if it is, motherfucker had a perfect year. He did. I mean,
the return was epic. The return was epic. The run was fun. We got the MJ. We got so many matches out of it. I'm glad I got to see him work with FTR, who are two great guys that I get along with great. I'm glad to see that all work out. And it will always, I as a fan, I still want more. But that's selfishly as a fan, I still want more because I've been a CM Punk fan for so long that I'm like, I wasn't done yet. But and also I just feel like, because in conversations I've had with the Hart family and Brett, like, you know, sometimes I think there comes a point in their careers, like, it doesn't define them no more, but they always have that itch of like, I wish I could just give back more. Like, I feel like hopefully he has a feeling where he's like, maybe he still wants to give back more because he knows he still can, and hopefully we see him again. I would feel remiss if I didn't ask you about this, because I feel like this is how this all got here, and we started going real long because this is what happens when you start talking about wrestling. Go forever. But share that picture with my all-time favorite, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. You told the story about how you met him and how you built that
Loose-
relationship. I just want to hear about it. Tell me about the story. Elaborate on it more that you couldn't elaborate on Instagram, because I live for a good Macho Man story, because I never got to meet him.
Okay.
He's one of my favorites I never got to meet.
Okay, so here's the thing. So we were at this trade show because Rancid used to have our own merch company, because we decided that we didn't want to deal with the big merchandising companies. Number one, because the deals were never that fair, and even when they looked like they were fair, they would still have been stepped on 3 to 4 times before you even saw, your work.
Yeah.
And so we decided we're going to go and do our own merch company. And not only that, but on our backs, we're going to bring in the GBHs, we're going to bring the Exploiteds, all these bands who never had proper merch deals and have been ripped off their whole life. We're going to bring them in, and we're going to build this merch company. And that way everybody's going to get paid fair. And they're not only going to get paid fair, but there's going to be no stepping on the royalties. And they're going to probably see more money out of their shit than they ever have, right? So that's the idea.
Yeah.
So part of that idea is like going out and getting your name out there, right? To find manufacturers for t-shirts and what can we do, and these things. So we end up going to this trade show in Las Vegas, and we go to the booth, and kind of taking a little walk around, and I find out that the Macho Man is in the building, right?
Yeah.
Because I ran into someone, and they said, yeah, we were just over at the Macho Man thing. And I'm like, well, where was it? Oh, it's in building 3 or whatever. So I go back, and I have to, I said I was going to hang out at the table for another 10 minutes. And I remember I looked at the guy who was kind of running the company. I said, I'm taking Tim, we're getting out of here. And I go, we're going to go find the Macho Man. So anyways, we took off, and I was like jogging, right? Because he was doing an autograph session at the Slim Jim booth. We're running through the place, and we find the place that it's in. We're going up and down the aisles trying to figure it out, because it's like in a big warehouse kind of thing,
Yeah.
So it's huge. So going up and down the aisles, turn to the right, see it. It's right down in the corner, and he's got some people, because it looks like the booth is empty, and there's like a couple people, and he's leaving. He's done with his autograph thing. So rush up there, right? And he's kind of, well, we're going to go over here. Where's the car? Where's the car going to pick me up? So he's done.
Yeah.
There's nobody more around. And we're just standing there, and he kind of, does one of these, and he turns around and he goes, you guys look familiar. And I said, yeah, hey, Bubba, this is my name's Lars. This is Tim. We play in Rancid. He goes, yeah, I know who you guys are. I said, he's like, what can I do for you? And I said, listen, I came because I'm a huge fan. I'm a wrestling fan, and I loved, your work and whatever. And he stops what he's doing, and he turns back around, and he talks with us for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's on his way out. So this is how cool he is, right?
Mhm.
He actually is leaving, right? And he stops, and he takes his time, and we start just shooting the shit, and we start, talking about this and that and whatever. And so, and before I even left, like I remember we had traded numbers, right? Because I tell him about Rancid Radio and that we've had a few wrestlers. One of them, first professional wrestling interview ever given by a guy by the name of John Cena.
Yeah.
When he was the prototype,
Yeah.
was on Rancid Radio.
Oh,
I saw John. I
That's
saw
crazy.
John. I saw John Cena's first and second match ever as a
Oh,
prototype.
Oh, wow.
So, anyways, long story short, Tim had a Polaroid camera. So here is the photo,
Oh, wow.
original
Yeah.
photo, and then I didn't have anything to sign, and I got my little autograph book. So, but that's
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 awesome.
Macho
so
Man.
cool.
So
That's
how
what
long
we-
did you stay in touch after that then?
Well, it was really cool because a few days later, we got on the phone, and we were trying to work out because I don't think he was working for WCW at the time. I think they had let him go.
What year was it?
Shit, bro.
I think he left in like October of 1999, right? That's when he left WCW. He made one appearance in April, but he was done. Like he didn't work for them no more. He just made that one appearance in like March, April or something. And then he was just kind of like a free agent after that till like 04.
Yeah, I want to say that it must have been around 99 or 2000.
Okay.
So that would make sense. 2000, maybe even 2001.
Yeah.
Because I remember he wasn't really working for the WCW, but he had other shit going on.
He always,
And so I was on the phone with them, and we were trying to work out, a time to get together and do this interview. And then it turned into just like, just simple shit. Like, I remember watching some preseason baseball and getting a text from Macho Man, who was at a preseason game, saying, "You got to check this kid out. He plays for blah blah blah, or whatever." Yeah. And so he's like giving me like scouting reports.
For those that don't know, like he was a pro baseball player before wrestling.
And he could throw the ball right and left-handed.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I can't even say the word I'm not going to try, but yeah.
I think they call it ambidextrous. I'm not
ambidextrous,
sure.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but so we would talk about just kind of bullshit stuff, but he was always very nice, and just like it would have one part sports, one part what are you doing, one part where are you, when are you going to come home, we talk about some of the road life or whatever, like, what was hard or whatever it was. And then I would ask him a few questions, mostly about like wrestling. Like, I never got personal, I never said, "Oh, what's really going on with you and Hulk Hogan?" Like I never did that shit, Yeah. But like I would say, "Hey, I was watching one of your matches from Memphis the other night or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it was him and Dundee. I don't know." Yeah. And he would just be like, "Oh, that he would hit hard," or blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "When I go in there, I would, really punch because that's the way I was taught," and blah, blah, blah. And my dad, and, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And, just random shoot the shit kind of stuff. But he was always super gracious with me. You know what I mean? And he's, the fact that he just even knew the band and, or whatever, he would, sometimes say, "I'm listening to the Wolves record, man. What's that one track with? It's got like the thing. It's like a reggae or something." And I'd just be like, "What the fuck?" You know what I mean? Like, there was like 3 or 4 of them on there, so I'd be like, "Daily, it's the train one, the train one," and just be like, "Whoa," like just shit like that. I mean, but he was super, super cool. He's, he fully humanized himself. And, because that's the thing, I think with musicians and pro athletes or pro wrestlers or performers, there's an instant kinship because of the lifestyle. Yeah. Because you're rarely at home, you're out on the road, you're putting miles on your body. It's a physical job. It's hard to eat. It's hard to sleep. You're in a different bed every night, whatever it may be, it's hard to, it's hard to keep relationships. It's hard to, you miss weddings, you miss funerals, you miss everything a lot of the times, So, and just to have that commonality with people, I think is helpful. And I think that's where, when I've become friends with pro wrestlers, and the real deep friendships stem from that kind of like lifestyle that we live, or maybe it's the upbringing, So, like a guy like Punk, he grew up like me. We grew up like each other, absentee fathers, shitty fucking, broken homes, or whatever it was. We worked for everything that we got. No one ever handed out, we're always sort of the outcast no matter where we went, blah, blah, blah. Like you could find these commonalities, and I think that over the years, cultivating these relationships with pro wrestlers, it's been pretty cool, because then you do get to, humanize a Macho Man, even though we look at him and think, he's insane. He's a walking gimmick, you know what I mean? But there is also this human being behind him too, that is him really, at the end of the day, who was just a nice dude that took time for some little fucking punk rocker in a band and talked about baseball or whatever.
No, it's super. And that's the thing. I've met enough people, I talked to enough people now that did know him in his real life, and that's why I'm like, I always enjoy like a real life Macho Man story, because the documentaries that come out stuff, and we hear a lot of the same stuff. I'm like, anytime you talk to someone that actually knew him or made some sort of connection, I'm like, no, like he was like the coolest. Like he was so laid back, so chill. He was.
Well, I mean, it's funny because sometimes when you meet wrestlers, their personas are this and like his persona was so huge, but as a human being, it was like very humble. And it's like the guy that's like the most humble, I always thought was Hitman, right? And then when I was spending time with him, and he's just such a humble dude, and just a nice guy,
100%.
And you kind of realize that it's not a big transition for him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like he's not on, I mean, of course he's times 10, but his times 10 is different than a Macho Man's times 10.
100%.
Because it's almost like night and day personalities.
Yeah, Macho was a character where Brett was a character to an extent, but he was the technician. It was this craft that he was intense about. Macho wasn't overall. Yeah,
his character wasn't so far from the truth. Whereas Macho, he was a larger than life human being, obviously, but I would say for different reasons than what the world knows him for.
100%. I've had the pleasure to meet. I've had the pleasure to meet and hang out with Brett a ton, but I've never got to meet the Macho Man, so I always enjoy a good Macho Man story. Those are my two favorites. I'm a big Punk guy. I've met him once so far, but hopefully we'll meet him again sometime down the road. We're going to wrap this up, but two really last quick questions. I'm going to ask one. I'll let Daniel ask the very last question, just because I do want to make sure we talk about it a little bit. Super cool that Ruby Riot's now Ruby Soho, named after one of your songs. She's got the entrance music. You have to perform it live. How was all that for you? Like, that must be cool that you now officially have like a little piece of in the wrestling industry like that now.
Yeah, I mean, about fucking time. Well, she hit me up on Instagram because she was still with the WWE at the time. She's like, hey, I want to do this outfit, but it's going to be sort of like in your honor. Is it okay? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'm a fan of yours. I watch you wrestle. She was one of the reasons why I would tune into the product, honestly. Long story short, that's how we sort of introduced each other. She hit me up first. And when she got released from the WWE, and we had been, we exchanged pleasantries. I sent her some Rancid gear, whatever she wanted, whatever, blah, blah. When she got released from the WWE, I hit her up on a whim. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see because I do a podcast called The Wrestling Perspective with my buddy Dennis.
Yeah.
And it's like a weekly show. And it's normally we have a guest and we just talk about, history, and you can find it like on YouTube and you can watch it on Fight TV. If you have the Fight TV app, you can watch it.
Go check it out, everybody. Yeah.
Yes. So, I said, hey, would you come on? And, of course, if there's nothing that you don't want to talk about, we just want to have you on as a guest because we're fans. And that's kind of what this is not a dirt sheet thing. We're not trying to get like insider baseball
headlines or all that stuff. Yeah.
No. I didn't know we were going to create as many headlines as we did, but we did. But
that's what happens. I did the same. I'm like, I'm not trying to do this stuff for headlines. And next, they're just picking it up themselves. And you're like, oh, okay.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So she comes on the thing and and we were kind of like just shooting the shit. And she's like, yeah, of course I'm going to still wrestle. And, I'm looking for a new name. And I said, well, it's fucking obvious. It should be Ruby Soho.
Yeah.
And she said, do you think that could happen? I said, well, I know a few guys, I think I could make this work for you.
Yeah.
And so basically at the end of the day, like, a couple days later, we exchanged numbers, whatever. A couple days later, she's like, okay, I can't really talk about it, but, I got plans, so on and so forth. And I said, okay, well, if it's a serious deal, then I'll bring it to the boys, whatever. And then, I talked to all the guys in the band. I was like, check it out. This is what the opportunity is. And then she's like, I want to use Ruby Soho as the theme song. And so we had to, obviously get Tony involved and, everything like that because, a lot of things had to happen. but we just worked it as quick, and Tony, obviously we knew each other from, so it's like, it was a match made in heaven,
Yeah.
So, we kind of just put it all to bed, and she told me what the plans were for her, and that this is when she was going to be coming out and stuff like that. And I had to keep this all to my chest. And it's like, that's the shitty part about having friends who are pro wrestlers. You kind of know the shit that they're going to do before they're going to do it. And you have to keep it right here. And the wrestling fan in me wants to share it with everybody, just, you're not going to believe what's going on.
Yeah.
But I can't. And I don't mind, because the secrets are safe with me. But I was, as the everything was building and then to watch it just like unfold, and I'm there with my family, we're on the couch and we're watching her debut, and here comes the song, and then that pop for her. That, oh my God, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, and it was just like, and then just talking to her, and how was it going there? And she's like, it's such an incredible experience. It's such a different thing, and she was really flying high around it all. And it was just, it was so great, but then it became less about me. And it always was sort of less about me and the band and stuff like that. And it was more about her, and just backing a woman in this profession with our song. Like, I thought, fuck yeah, this is the appropriate, because what we stand for and who we are as a band and as people, backing her in this part of her career, it felt like the best thing for us, 100%. So guys had come out to our songs on the indies and stuff like that, Sterling James Keenan, as we know, as
Corey Graves,
somebody completely different now. But there's Jake Shields, who's the MMA fighter. He came out to some Rancid stuff when he used to fight. There's been people who've done it before, right?
Yeah.
But this was a big thing just because I feel like the way that it was presented, and then them knowing one of my best friends was going to be at the same company, and then having just watching that unfold too, like that was a big fucking deal, watching him come back after 7 years, and he's
based off a rumor.
It's crazy.
That was the hugest reception I think I've ever seen for anything. I've literally never seen a reception like that for anything, so and just with what was happening with that company at the time, and the excitement around it. And I was probably more excited for her than I was for myself. And then when you hear JR go, "Oh, I met Lars Frederiksen, he's a nice guy," you're just like, what the fuck? Or you're talking to JR, and he's just so nice to you, and then fucking Tony Schiavone's there, and I'm just like, fuck, dude, you're a lot shorter than I ever thought you. But Tony Schiavone, you're like, what? You guys are the voice of my goddamn childhood.
100%. I think he's heard that so many times. I said the same thing to him when I met him at a WrestleCon, and then I walked to him like, man, he's probably heard that 10 million thousand times.
But you know what? But that's the greatest compliment that you could ever. When people, say stuff like that about the music that I've made over time, I kind of chuckle to myself, because I'm like, you're dating the fuck out of me, kid. But at the same time, it's like, I'm like, also, okay, I'm stoked. Like, I was a part of your life, and you didn't, little did you know that you would be able to tell me that one day or whatever, what I mean? Like, so there I was, and I'm hanging out, and Tony's super cool, Schiavone. And then, finally getting to meet Tony Khan in person was awesome. And then, seeing a lot of the younger talent, and just getting to because a lot of those guys, I knew from the indies, like Will Hobbs. I used to see in the indies here when he was Will Power. And I remember my youngest son was very trepidatious about going to the matches. And it was the first guy that he clocked onto was Will Hobbs. And Will, at one of the shows, that he goes, "Is Will Hobbs going to be there?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I want to go." And I said, "Okay." So we went to the show, and then Will Hobbs was standing over there, at the autograph table. When I said, "Why don't you go say hello?" And he goes, "Well, come with me." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, Will, I just want to let you know that my son Soren here is a super fan." And Will came out from behind the table, got down on one knee, said, "Hey, how you doing? My name's Will. What's your name?" Because Will's a fucking monster,
Huge,
right?
yeah.
So, and Soren got to take pictures with them, and Will was so freaking nice to him, and Soren fell in love with pro wrestling because of that interaction.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it brought me and Soren closer together because of Will Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Awesome.
So I love fucking Will Hobbs. I'll be a fan for the rest of my life because not only am I a fan of his skill, and I saw it even back then, but like that's the thing that the power of this fandom and this sort of form of entertainment can bring your family close together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm on a whole different level with my kid. We can actually, there's another experience we can have together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because of this pro wrestler who didn't have to walk out from, if it was MJF would probably just threw a chocolate bar at him. But then, fast forward to when we're all, hanging out, at the Vegas show before we're playing, he's hanging out with MJF and Dax and Cash and Uncle Punk and AJ and, fucking, meets Chris Jericho and the list goes on and on and on and on. And he's just like, now he's just like, yeah, I know all those guys.
He's
right?
he's immersed in it. He knows
everybody. So, but that's the thing. It's like, this kind of entertainment, why I think it's so important to a bunch of people, because I think it has different facets, like there's that family element and all that stuff. But to get back to the question about Ruby Soho, like I said, I'm sorry I went off on a tangent.
I appreciate your time. I feel like I've kept you longer than you expected, and I didn't want to.
I'll talk wrestling, dude.
Great.
You have to understand that there was decades where there was none of this.
Yeah.
You have to understand that. Like, being a professional wrestling fan, number one, there wasn't a lot of people who would admit it, first and foremost. Number two, had any sort of knowledge about it. Like I had knowledge about it. Like I wanted to talk about, how many title reigns that Ric Flair have, and when Kerry Von Erich only lasted 18 days because his brother was at the festival of his brother, whatever. Not a lot of people could sit on that level. I like,
honestly, it's the biggest part of why I made this page was like I was at an age where a lot of my friends used to watch, didn't watch anymore, and it was a situation where I was like, I remember being in class and I told my friend I was going to leave to go home and watch Raw, and then he told me he was a wrestling fan. I was like, "Oh my god, you're a wrestling fan too!" And it brought us closer. And I was like, "Oh, it's like oh, you have to like figure out if someone else is a wrestling fan. They're not going to tell you up front." And then once you get so close, and then when I made the Instagram page, it was more like I was bored. I was working in a kind of dead mall at a phone booth, and I was like, I want to make a wrestling page. And then like,
and look what happened.
I create my own forum. Like I remember going on those forums when I was a kid just to talk to people about wrestling. I'm like, I'll create my own chat room and forum, and here we are. And I got to do some really cool stuff and meet some really cool people, and thank the people that helped me out at the beginning. I've known Max since before he even started training wrestling. And then, he paid it forward with that shout out he gave me in the middle of the Punk feud. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then I made the page a month after Punk walked out of WWE. And, I give him credit for bringing me back into wrestling with that pipe bomb, because I kind of fell out of it from like 2007 to like 2011. I watched, but like I was a teenager and I was Friday and I wasn't recording SmackDown stuff. So like, to be able to thank him at the Revolution media scrum after the pay-per-view when I was media, like I'm like, it all comes full circle, and like the thing started this just to connect with wrestling fans. You know what I mean? Like that was the whole.
And that's the thing, and it's like that's what I love about this community. It's like it's people from all walks of life, and it's like, and to me, like being a wrestling fan reminded me a lot about punk rock. Like you didn't really know anybody was into punk rock unless they looked like one.
Yeah.
Or looked like one.
Yeah.
You could never tell, because it was kind of a taboo thing. Why do you like that stuff? That's stupid. I mean, what do you, they question your sexuality or, try to emasculate you in some way or something like that. And you just be like, I just like it. What I mean? And so,
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the questions I never asked today that I had on my list of questions. Was I saw that one time you quoted that wrestling's pretty much like punk rock, and I was like, how did you make that comparison? But That's it right there, and I think that's super cool. Daniel, you ask your last question, and then
Okay.
we'll wrap things up here.
Okay.
No, for sure. You have so much, you've had so much, success in your career and also as a father. But I wanted to ask you, like, what advice would you give to someone who wants to break into the entertainment industry?
Well, I mean, I feel like, hard work trumps talent all the time. I mean, I know some of the most talented guitar players are still sitting at the edge of their bed, So I feel like, to get out there and hustle is really what you have to do. And, you're going to get sidelined. You're going to hit speed bumps. You're going to have success, and you're going to have, I won't call it failures. It's almost like you have to learn from your mistakes and from your successes as well, even though most people learn by their mistakes, right? At least you hope. No one's really ever learned anything by winning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like, for me, the road I took, I just knew that this is what I was going to do. And I had to commit 100%, and nothing was going to get in my way. Now, did I have to sacrifice? I sacrificed a hell of a lot, I sacrificed marriages. I sacrificed family life. I sacrificed a lot of things to get to where I was. And you even have to sacrifice yourself sometimes. But the one thing that I never didn't do is I never changed my moral compass to fit something to help me elevate myself. I never went against a core belief to make myself bigger or whatever. So I think that, the advice I would have is just to listen. You never listen to hear, you always listen to hear your gut.
Yeah.
And I think because if you listen to your head, if you're anything like me, there's a lot of things going on there, and not all of them are good. So, but if I know that when I have a gut instinct about something, I'm normally right. And if I'm scared to shitless to do something, it's 99.9% the right thing to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When it comes to decision making on the career path. The one thing that Rancid had that is very unique, and I've only really experienced it with them, even though I've had successful other projects or whatever, is that we were all sort of had the same vision and the same focus, and we all stuck together. We were someone described us as a pack of badgers. You tack one of them, you tack them all.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way we lived, even though we might not have always have gotten along to the best of our abilities. We're like a family, so it's to be expected.
Yeah.
It's always been about us, and everything else is sort of we sort of protect the mothership, so to speak. And anything else that we do to branch off, we give each other's, we give and we get each other's encouragement to go and to do that. And I think that's where you have to be, because you see a lot of young bands and a lot of young talents, and you'll see it in wrestling, just like you'll see it in rock and roll or any other fucking thing. Your ego is your worst enemy. And you do need some form of narcissism, and you need some form of ego to make it in these professions. You do. You just have to. You have to think that you're better than you are in order to push yourself, right?
Yeah.
100%.
I don't recall ever meeting somebody who's successful in their 20s that's not a cocky little prick that needs a punch in the face, including myself. So I think you have to have that element, but there has to be some sort of grounding with that as well. So I think there's a lot more to it than just like a basic phrase or line. I think success is also what you think of it as well. It's like, for me, success was just to be able to kind of get out and play my music in front of people.
Yeah.
That's all I really desired to get. I wanted to play shows. Once I joined Rancid, and then the crowds, started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we started to get more momentum. And they'll always say, you were the key ingredient that we needed, and we brought it in, and then these things happened. Well, I think that was all, it was all part of the process for me and for them. And there was all something to learn there, because, whatever we were doing, whatever life path that we were on, it didn't happen until we came together, and that's the thing. If you have the same like-minded people that will sacrifice and give everything, if I can only speak for a band.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of, those people around you, and you all have that same mindset, you'll be successful. It's just a matter of, it's how big you dream, So for me, like, I never wanted to be AC/DC or Metallica. That wasn't my trip. I always wanted to be the Ramones or Bad Religion or GBH, and that's what we got, right? So maybe we got a little bit better. But my point is, I don't know. That's for the historians to work out. But at the end of the day, like, the lessons that I learned along the way have been more valuable than the success, the fame, the notoriety. It's more about the life lessons that I've garnered over the time, and then it's also about giving back what was so, in a lot of ways, freely given to me, and I just, I feel like if you're young and you can sleep on the dirt floors, then that's what you got to fucking do. Because if you think that it's getting on a TV show, I'm sure that happens for some people. If you think it's about being a YouTube star, I'm sure that happens for people. That's just not where I come from. I come from a place of hard work, determination, fucking grit. I got to be fucking tough, because you're gonna run into people who are gonna be tougher than you, gonna be more badass than you. You got to learn to roll with the punches. You can't, I think about back in the day when we were fucking fist fighting with Hicks, and fucking now some of these Hicks would probably try to sue me or some shit, like it's a totally different.
Someone's gonna record something that's gonna get out there.
It's just a different world now. So I'm smart enough to understand what it is and where I can fit in and where I can, add something, and where I feel like maybe I might be over my head, I just don't get involved. So,
100%.
I hope that helps. I hope that helps answer your question.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Life,
for sure.
Having, experiences.
Well, how old are you guys?
Working hard. I'm 31.
How old are you?
I'm 20.
So
he's a
Pardon?
pro wrestler in training right now.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You know how to be respectful, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know the phrase please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know the phrase thank you?
Yes.
That will carry you further than any other two phrases or words in your life.
Yeah.
It's like people there. That's the thing about certain businesses. It's like there's gonna be situations where you will be taken advantage of. There just will be,
Yeah.
But you also have to sort of earn your stripes too. You gotta sit back and it's better to sit there and look stupid than open up your mouth and say something stupid.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And another quote I like is, "It's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice."
100%.
Yeah.
So, and I think that you got to just work hard and, give everything that you've got, and just, whatever you do, dream the biggest dream, because wherever human beings are master manifestors. It's the problem is that we get so clogged with all this other bullshit that we forget that channel.
Yeah.
Right. Because when I write a song, where does it come from? Some people think it comes from here. Bullshit. It comes from some over here. As Tom Petty used to call it, the psychic telephone. You just don't know. Now, is it really me that's doing that, or am I getting the information from somewhere? Right. I know this is far out, but my point is that it's the same for everybody. So if you think your life is going to be shit, if you think that you never get a break, if you think that the world is oppressing you, then that's exactly what will fucking happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you can rise above that, like a lot of the great leaders have said over the course of time, if you can rise above and take yourself out of that, you will find success there. That's where you
Absolutely.
find the success, right?
Yeah.
So work hard, pay your dues, pray, take your vitamins and whatever Hulk Hogan used to say.
So you're barely need your vitamins,
Need
brother.
vitamins, yeah.
But
There you go.
No, thank you. I
thank
appreciate
you
that.
so much. I'd love to have you back on just regularly, like
Anytime.
on the regular show, and just talk about what's happening in wrestling right now and like what you're enjoying and not enjoying and whatnot. But
Anytime you want to invite me, just hit me up.
for sure, I appreciate your time. It's been a blast. I'm
you.
sorry if I kept you longer than you expected.
No,
It just
listen, when I do these things, I know they can be 30 minutes to 3 hours. So it's like it's that's why I was asking, like, can we do it earlier? Because I have something to do at 6. And I thought,
okay,
well,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And yeah, stay in touch. I'd love to stay in touch, and like we'll
Cool.
figure something out in the future. And
Sure. Yeah.
and once again, guys, we'll check out your show that you guys have that they can find on Apple and YouTube and everything. And yeah,
we're interviewing Thunder Rosa tomorrow, so I'm pretty
Oh,
stoked.
there
wow.
you go. When is that going to drop?
It'll probably drop tomorrow night, I think,
Okay, so
because there's some big things in the works for us. I can't really get into it, but you know, we're about to take the next. We're on the cusp of taking the next step.
sweet.
Well,
There we go. That's as far as we can get with it.
But in the meantime, you can find me on Lars Frederiksen on Instagram. It's the one with the blue check. You can find my store, Laz's Locker. You can see me on Whatnot, where I'm selling a lot of my shit, wrestling toys, wrestling shirts, all kinds of stuff, personal worn gear, stage worn gear. I'm cleaning my house. I'm getting rid of so much stuff I've carried. So I'm doing a live stream on Saturday. When is this going to air?
I'll probably drop this week. Maybe like what day is it today? Today's Thursday. Oh, next week, probably next Tuesday.
Okay, so then you missed that. So, but anyway, it's all good. Come and follow me.
But there will
Come and see
probably be
my
another
shit.
one. There will be another live stream. Trust. Just follow them on social
Yes,
media,
yes.
and you'll know when it is.
Exactly.
And then you can get into the next one.
Awesome.
All
Right on,
right.
bro. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Keep doing the thing. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.